Hi, Mr. Hemi here, and today we're going to be talking about 4 types of animal-like protists, and we call them protozoans. Our key concept to keep in mind as we go through this lesson is, what are the characteristics of animal-like protists? And our objective is to be able to describe those 4 types of animal-like protists. We call them protozoans. Our vocabulary that we'll be focusing on throughout this lesson is pseudopod, contractile vacuole, symbiosis, and mutualism. Just to kind of review real quick, protists, and particularly protozoans, are animal-like in the fact that they consume other organisms and they're able to move around. And for the most part, protozoans tend to be unicellular. Now, there are 4 types of protozoans. There are the sarcodines that move and feed by forming pseudopods. We'll talk about those in a minute. Then we have the ciliates, and they move and feed using their cilia, the little hair-like features. Then we have the flagellates, and they're able to move around and feed using their flagella, which is like a whip-like tail. And then we have the last group, which are the parasites. And this group is differentiated based on how they feed. They tend to feed on the cells and body fluids of their host. Let's first take a look at the sarcodines. So the amoeba is probably one of the most common sarcodines, and of course the amoeba belongs to this protozoan group. And as we've already noted, sarcodines move and feed by forming pseudopods. These are temporary bulges of the cell. In fact, the word pseudopod means false foot. Yep, you heard me right. It means false foot. Pseudopods form when cytoplasm flows toward one location and the rest of the organism basically follows it. Pseudopods enable sarcodines to be able to move. For example, amoebas use pseudopods to move away from bright light. And sarcodines also use pseudopods to trap food. The organism is able to extend a pseudopod on each side of the food particle. The 2 pseudopods then join together, trapping the particle inside. Now, protozoans that live in freshwater, like amoebas and those sorts of protozoans, they have a small problem. These small particles, like those of water, can pass easily through the cell membrane into the cytoplasm. And if excess water were to build up inside the cell, the amoeba would basically burst. So fortunately, amoebas have a contractile vacuole found inside their cell, their unicell. And it's a structure that collects the extra water and then expels it, kind of spits it out of the cell. Here you see this amoeba has pseudopods that it uses to move and feed, and they form again when cytoplasm flows towards one location and the rest of the amoeba follows. They have the food vacuole, and that is when the ends of 2 pseudopods fuse, they form this food vacuole, and then the food is broken down inside of the food vacuole within the cytoplasm. Of course, there's cytoplasm in the amoeba, there's a nucleus where all the DNA material, genetic material is stored, and they do have a cell membrane as well. And of course, we talked about the contractile vacuole. The next group of the 4 is the ciliates. These are protozoans that have cilia, and they're the second group that we're talking about. And these cilia are hair-like projections from cells that move with a wave-like motion, kind of like oars on a boat. So this is how ciliates are able to move around and obtain their food. And the cilia act something like these tiny little oars, moving the boat around, and their movement also not only helps them move around, but it also sweeps food into the organism. The cells of ciliates, like the paramecium that we're going to see here in a moment, The cells of ciliates, like the paramecium that we see here, are very complex. Notice that the paramecium has two contractile vacuoles that expel water from the cell. It also has more than one nucleus. The large nucleus controls the everyday tasks of the cell, whereas the small nucleus functions in reproduction. Paramecia usually, paramecia being the plural form, or the way we say paramecium when there's more than one, is paramecia. So paramecia usually reproduce asexually through binary fission, which we talked about in a previous lesson. But sometimes paramecia are able to reproduce by conjugation, which we also talked about recently. This occurs when two paramecia join together and exchange some of their genetic material. This brings us to the flagellates, which is our third group of protozoans, and these are protists that use long whip-like flagella or tails to move around. And a flagellate may have one or more flagella, so they can have lots and lots of flagella. Some of these protozoans live inside the bodies of other organisms. For example, one type of flagellate lives in the intestines of termites. There, they help digest the wood that the termites eat, producing sugars for themselves and for the termites. So, in turn, the termites actually protect the protozoans. The interaction between these two species, is an example of symbiosis, which just means a close relationship in which at least one of the species benefits. Although when both partners benefit from living together like this, this is a type of symbiosis called mutualism. Sometimes, however, protozoans can harm their host. For example, Giardia is a parasite in humans. Wild animals such as beavers deposit Giardia in freshwater streams, rivers, and lakes, and then when a person comes along and drinks water that contains the Giardia, these protozoans attach to the person's intestine, where they feed and reproduce. The person develops a serious intestinal condition commonly called hitchhiker's disease. So again, flagellates sometimes provide a mutualistic relationship with the host where it's beneficial for both, but other times they can actually make people sick or other organisms sick when they act as parasites. And here you can see a microscopic image of the Giardia protist or protozoan. Okay. That brings us to the rest of the protozoans, which are these parasitic protozoans. And this is our fourth and last type. And they're more characterized by the way that they live than by the way that they move. They're all parasites that feed on cells and body fluids of their hosts, and these protozoans are able to move in a variety of ways. Some have flagella, and some depend on hosts for transport. One of them even produces a layer of slime that allows it to kind of slide around from place to place. And many of these parasites have more than one host. For example, Plasmodium is a protozoan that causes malaria, which is a disease of the blood. Two hosts are involved in Plasmodium's life cycle: humans and a species of mosquitoes found in tropical areas. The disease spreads when a healthy mosquito bites a person with malaria, becomes infected, and then bites another healthy person. Symptoms of malaria can include high fevers that alternate with severe chills, and these symptoms can last for weeks and then disappear, only to reappear a few months later.